Welcome back. Blake Cousins here, Third Phase of Moon. The mysteries behind the megalithic structures discovered around the world. Well, we have the man who has developed a sequence of investigative tours around the world. Brien Forrester's with us, and we're going to go over the mysteries of Egypt and much, much more. Brien, thanks for joining us right here at Third Phase of Moon.
My pleasure. Thank you as always.
All right, Brien, I know recently you've been allowed access to unprecedented locations in Egypt, revealed to the public for the first time. Can you tell us about some of the mysteries that you've been involved with as of recent times?
Actually, our trip unfortunately had to be cut short by a few days because of the worldwide events that are going on. So we weren't able to go into what's called the Osiris Shaft, which is a vertical series of shafts that go into the Giza Plateau, about 200 feet underground in the bedrock. But I had been there twice before, and this time there's a site at Abydos, which is in central Egypt, and it's an ancient dynastic place, but there's a structure that was built on purpose underground there out of a combination of giant granite blocks, some weighing 60 tons, and then the perimeter that it's inside is made of quartzite. So the granite comes from Aswan, which is hundreds of miles to the south, and then the quartzite comes from Cairo, which is hundreds of miles to the north, and it's been off limits to the general public more or less forever. So we were able to look down into it, and all of a sudden, because of the influence of our tour director, this man came up to me and simply said, "Let's go." And he let me go down into the Osirion for half an hour by myself.
So you're saying unprecedented access you were given to, and to a place that hasn't been revealed to the public for the first time. Tell us, Brien, what did you experience down there? What did you see?
Well, it's like a lot of the megalithic sites, it looks very industrial in nature. You know, people call everything a temple. Temple of the Moon, or the Temple of the Sun, or the Temple of Isis, or whatever. But this is clearly a pre-dynastic construction because there's no mortar used whatsoever. It's just giant blocks, incredibly tight-fitting, like what we find in Peru and Bolivia and other locations. And no one knows what its original function is, but of course Egyptologists have to give it a name, so they call it one of the symbolic tombs of Osiris, and that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it's perfectly bilaterally symmetrical, and as I said, it was built on purpose underground next to the dynastic temple, which is called the Seti Temple. So I was able to film quite a bit, thankfully, in there. So that's going to be, I'm putting little clips up on my YouTube channel, but the whole thing I'm going to wait for at least another couple of weeks, as with all of the other stuff that I've been filming in this recent 8th annual trip to Egypt.
Yeah, we're able to share some clips right now at Third Phase of Moon. Special thanks to Brien Forrester, and make sure you're going to subscribe to his channel to look at the full-length videos of what he captured at Abydos. But can you tell us some of these granite blocks? They weigh massive amounts, up to 50 tons, you say? How is it possible that they were able to bring these granite stone, down to these subchambers deep below the surface?
Well, that's one of the great mysteries, and the level of precision is, at least 21st century in terms of the technology that would have been required. And we know that for most of dynastic Egypt time, they had bronze tools, just like in Peru, they had bronze tools. And so that doesn't explain how up to 60-ton blocks were cut from a quarry at Aswan in the southernmost point of modern day Egypt and moved, hundreds of miles to the north, and then also the quartzite ones that were moved from Cairo. So, once you've spent time in these megalithic sites, you obviously see the difference between what the dynastic people could have done and what they couldn't have done. And the great thing is that Egypt is opening up more and more of these ancient locations that were off limits, and now they charge a pretty hefty fee, but when we go back next March, our whole group will have access to this same location for 2 hours.
So why do you think that Egypt is kind of loosening up some of these sites and opening it up to the public? Is it just for financial gain, or are they trying to get the information out and share the wealth of history that they actually have in their past?
Well, it's a combination of things. For a long time, there was a man called Mr. Hawass who was in charge of the Council of Supreme Antiquities, and he was very controlling. He was also, I think, financed by the Edgar Cayce Foundation, and so he limited what people could get access to. Like, we do know that there are openings in the Sphinx itself. There are at least 3 different openings there that have been revealed through older video clips. And the new head of the Supreme Council of Antiquities is simply, I think he wants to show more of the grandeur of ancient Egypt, and some of the younger Egyptologists are realizing that there is this pre-dynastic period of construction, and they can't openly say that to the public yet. But we had one of the best with us, and some of the stories he told me were just mind-boggling. So he knows for sure that there was a very long period of ancient construction, at least 13,000 years ago. And then you had the arrival of the dynastic people about 5,500 years ago. And they simply inherited the much more ancient sites, like the pyramids, the main pyramid system at Giza, and these other locations like the Osirion and the Osiris Shaft, and a lot other. There's a huge tunnel system underneath the Giza Plateau that I was given access to 7 years ago. We spent hours going underground through this tunnel system in the area of the Great Pyramid.
Wow, absolutely incredible. So the pre-dynastic people from over 12,000 years ago, beyond that, where did this civilization end up? Where is the evidence of their tools or their history? Is it written on the walls, or is this something that the history still has yet to consider, these pre-dynastic civilizations?
Well, they're slowly starting to realize it, because so many of us have gone there and filmed these places and showed the difference between what the dynastic people could have done and what they couldn't have done. So it's leaking into the public anyway, and that's the best way for it to happen is for independent researchers to go film it and put it on YouTube and stuff like that. So it's like sand leaking out anyway. So there's no way they can control it. So also there is the financial gain, because it costs between $2,400 and $3,000 for a 2-hour visit to these places. So you have to have a big enough group to go to finance something like that. But the more eyes that see it, the more they will more or less have to open up the other places that have been off limits in the past.
So let me get this right, Brien. So these pre-dynastic civilizations that built these megalithic structures, their technology matches, if not goes beyond modern day technology. Could you tell us how the hell did they get this information and technology over 12,000 years ago to build these megastructures? Where's the evidence of these other megastructures so that they had some prototypes? Where are the prototypes, and how did they get this information and dive straight into these incredible megastructures out of nowhere?
Well, that again is the mystery, but the evidence is the fact that they exist, and the fact that they're made out of hard stone, so they've lasted, several thousand years, older than the dynastic time period. People keep asking where are the tools. Well, they either took the tools with them, or the tools have been found and they're being hidden underneath the Cairo Museum. Those are the two plausible answers. But we've also found evidence of catastrophic events having occurred about 13,000 years ago, including heat scorching in locations like Karnak and a lesser known site in the Nile Delta to the north called Tanis, where you see that the surface of the stone has been scorched by flashes of high heat, and that's been backed up by our geologist who always comes with us. So that's the reason why you always, or almost always, see cataclysmic damage at this site. And it's the same in Peru. Like, none of these structures are perfectly intact. They show signs of massive cataclysmic events occurring in those locations. And if it was heat, for example, like solar plasma from the sun, which is Robert Schoch's theory, that would have vaporized any life form in the area, and could have even melted any metallic tools that were there, so they would be unrecognizable.
So in Egypt, you have this catastrophic event, but then in the continent of America, we have the Ice Age. So there's different contrasts of heat. You have the Ice Age on one side of the planet, and then this catastrophic plasmic wave from the sun possibly destroying the civilizations that built these megalithic structures. Is this the reason why we're not seeing any kind of massive pyramids in the American continent?
Yeah, well, basically, Canada and the United States were buried in 1 to 2 miles of ice up until the end of the last ice age. And the end of the last ice age was very rapid. People think that it was a slow melting of the glacier, but there's more and more evidence that it was incredibly fast. That caused the world's oceans to rise by 350 to 400 feet in a very short time period. We're talking maybe less than a year, and that could have also destabilized the planet itself. At the most ancient sites in Egypt, we see that their alignment is off by 23.5 degrees from north, south, east, and west. So that could be that at the end of the last ice age, you had actually the axis of the planet shift, and that's why these sites are suddenly off. And the dynastic sites are almost perfectly aligned north, south, east, and west.
You were telling us a little earlier in the interview that you were getting knowledge from this tour guide or some officials in Egypt that would blow you away. Can you tell us a little bit of insight? What did he tell you?
Well, we were given access to something that has never been open to the public. I just remembered that's the step pyramid at Saqqara. And the step pyramid of Saqqara, academics say, is the oldest pyramid. It was the first experiment at building a pyramid. So they built a step pyramid, and then after that, they think that the Great Pyramid, the Second Pyramid, and the Third Pyramid were constructed. But that's not actually the case. The step pyramid is the first pyramid that the dynastic people built, but they used as a model the Great Pyramid because it already existed. And so I didn't know, but I was told about a year ago by Nassim Harriman that he was given access to the inside of the step pyramid, and that there's a giant shaft that goes straight down in the middle. So we paid for that last month, and we got to go inside. There's a causeway that goes down into it, and it's several hundred feet that you walk through to get to the central core, and then you look down, and there's a massive shaft that goes down hundreds of feet with a giant box in the center made of huge blocks of granite. And I was told by the guide that we had that it actually goes several stories underground, and that will be opened up over the course of time. So it's that gives more proof that there's a giant system of tunnels underneath, especially the Giza Plateau area, it's a bunch of tunnels that interconnect with one another. And they've even admitted, the Egyptologists admitted that there's one tunnel that goes at least 1.5 miles. And that's an official story.
It seems impossible of the technology and the elaborate tunnel system beneath the pyramids themselves. It makes no sense to me why they would do this unless there was some kind of correlation between all the pyramids and a design behind it. Some people actually claim, and the history books claim, that the pyramids are nothing but tombs for pharaohs, but the history also reveals that there's been no pharaohs found within these ancient pyramids. What do you think the ancient pyramids were designed for?
Well, the thing is that there, thousands of bodies were buried in the area of the Giza Plateau, but those were chambers and shafts that already existed. So the dynastic people simply used these rooms and chambers and tunnels and shafts as tombs because they were already there. They didn't construct them. There's no evidence, of course, that the Great Pyramid was ever used as a tomb. Actually, none of them. I think there are probably about 8 super ancient pyramids, and then you have the dynastic pyramids, which are much more inferior in terms of construction. And it appears that the ancient pyramids were resonant devices of some kind, not necessarily electricity producing, but energetic in nature, using the energy of the earth itself to enhance and focus that energy, and then project the energy out to the obelisks, which are also pre-dynastic, because the obelisk, the largest, was never completed at 1,200 tons. They are pre-dynastic because they're made of one piece of granite, again from Aswan. And the unfinished one is still in the quarry at Aswan. There's no way that could have been done during dynastic times. So we also have, again, evidence of ancient cataclysms that suddenly stopped activity. So you have this giant unfinished obelisk. You have the site of Tanis in the Nile Delta that looks like a huge explosion occurred there and just blew everything up. And then you have the dynastic people taking those giant pieces of stone and building other buildings with them in the same relative location. But also Tanis is a hill, and there are, I think, 6 plants that grow there. That's it. The whole area, like the Nile Delta, is incredibly fertile in terms of growing food. Then you have this basically bald hill that has 6 spiky plants growing on it. And when you walk around on the surface, it's like walking on the moon. There is no soil. It's more or less like dust that has no nutrient value in it anymore. And again, that would have been the result of being hit by a giant blast of heat.
It'd be hard to imagine where we'd be today if this cataclysmic event didn't happen and these pre-dynastic civilizations continued to build these megalithic structures. What would it look like on Earth today if this major catastrophe didn't happen? Any theories on that?
Oh, well, we would be incredibly advanced. We would easily be going to the stars by now. If you had 13,000 years of increased industrialization, increased advances in science and things like that. So, but this, it's also believed by some that these cataclysms happen every 13,000 years. So we're actually getting relatively close to that time period. I don't think it'll happen in our lifetimes. It might, but that's why it's important to cherish every day that we do live.
100%, Brien. And recently, there's been people looking at the Atlas Comet recently that's kind of come into nearby to planet Earth. What do you make of these celestial objects that do kind of threaten Earth in possible ways? The technology we have now, maybe we could divert some of these cataclysmic events.
Well, we have, there are many celestial objects come very close to hitting us. It's not that infrequent. And about 1.5 years ago, they discovered in Greenland that there's an asteroid that hit the Earth probably about 13,000 years ago, and it's 1 mile in diameter. It's made of nickel iron, and its force of strike would have been, they calculate, something like 50 million times the power of the Hiroshima bomb. So that could have been one of the things that destabilized the planet, caused it to wobble and then recenter itself, because that could explain why our planet's at 23.5 degrees and not straight up and down. So that's a recent discovery. And that's, we're getting more and more information, more and more science is coming out showing that this series of events happened over the course of probably about 1,000 years. It wasn't like a one-day event. but it was a series of things that happened, destabilized the planet, wiped out all of the megafauna in North America. That's why you find all of those woolly mammoths in Siberia flash frozen with food still in their stomachs. Again, I think that tells us that the planet suddenly was turned in position from vertical to 23 degrees, causing that flash freezing, then the rising of the sea level, the burying of any civilization that would have been close to the seashore at that time, as in Atlantis. Atlantis didn't sink, but the water level rose very, very quickly and caused massive destruction and causing any survivors to escape as fast as possible to find a new homeland.
It's hard to imagine and comprehend just a rock from outer space impacting planet Earth would cause so much destruction. It set us back 13,000 years in technology where we could be traversing the stars right now. It's hard to tell what would have happened if these events didn't go down, but it's kind of sad to think about that we missed out on this technology that was so advanced 12, 13,000 years ago. And how did these civilizations learn this technology to build these megastructures? Boggles the mind. Brien, I know you're a busy guy and you're going to be getting back to Egypt soon. Tell us, what's your next expedition?
Well, unfortunately, the borders of Peru are closed right now, but hopefully by the 26th of April, they'll open. I've got a flight for May 2nd that I'm hoping to be able to get on. And I just want to go home and hang out for a while. We have a tour in June of Peru and Bolivia, looking at the ancient megalithic sites, including, of course, Pumapunku and Machu Picchu. Then we have another one focusing on the elongated skulls in August in Peru and Bolivia, and another one in November. And then Egypt will be March of 2021. So if people are interested, just go to my website, hiddenincatours.com, and you can see the itinerary. And right after that, we'll be going to Malta to explore the ancient megalithic aspects of that island.
Stunning stuff, Brien. We're going to be supplying the original link below to Brien Forrester's YouTube channel, his website. Make sure you follow Brien on his adventures. He's got tons of evidence on his website in regards to the megalithic structures that we talked about today. Brien, it's been our pleasure having you right here at Third Phase of Moon. You be safe over there.
Okay, it's always a pleasure to be with the Cousins brothers. Aloha.
Well, thank you, Brien, and everybody. You be safe out there as well, and keep your eyes on the skies. And if you see anything amazing, submit it to us right here at Third Phase of Moon. Blake Cousins. We'll see you real soon.